ladies and gentlemen. This is Deepika signing in from Skillablers desk. Today we have an interesting industrial track with us. We have e-commerce and logistics, and we have again an honor and privilege of having Mr. Ramesh Chandra join us as the moderator for this session. Welcome, Ramesh Chandra, sir. He's the continuous improvement leader with GE Aviation USA. He's a supply chain management and process involvement expert with about 20 years plus experience in global leadership experience with about 3 Fortune 500 firms, which are GE Aviation, Cummins and United Technologies. His areas of expertise include strategic sourcing, demand management and demand forecasting, Lean Six Sigma manufacturing operations, quality, materials management, distribution, logistics, and the list goes on. Well, I'll add a few more to that. We have materials management to add on and distribution logistics. We also have integrated business planning and business analytics, project management, and program management. So you have lots to your credit, and I have less time, but nevertheless, I have completed more. He also has to his kitty industry verticals experience in aviation and aerospace industry, heavy equipment manufacturing, automotive, transportation, and marine. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
What have you not done in life?
Well, here's the thing. If I'd known that intro was going to be a mouthful, I would have probably stuck with just my name.
Yes.
Let me put it this way. Thanks, Deepika. So just to get this started.
I also have in the panel with me industry professional, Dr. Dhruv Nath, Professor, Management Development Institute, Gurgaon. Institutional professional, I have Mr. Ravikant Yamarthi, CEO, Logistics Sector Skill Council. In youth professional, I have with me Mr. Nagaraju, Branch Manager, Orbit Shipping Services. And youth student, I have Mohammed Faizan. Welcome, sir. Please take ahead your session. Thank you. Over to you, Ramesh, sir.
All right. Finally, I get to speak. All right. Thank you, Deepika, for the introduction. So we have a good, diverse panel represented here, and I look forward to a highly engaging discussion. So before we launch into a discussion, though, let me kind of set the stage by laying out some of the scope of today's discussion and explaining some of the ground rules that, just to ensure that we can cover as much as possible over the next 55 minutes or so. Firstly, we would choose to focus on the end-to-end logistics sector today. And specifically, it's the management of flow of product all the way from source to consumer. And this includes aspects like warehouse and fulfillment center operations. We have transportation, we have cross-border commerce, logistics technology, materials handling, demand planning, inventory planning, and last mile delivery, and this is perhaps the most visible aspect of the logistics industry for most consumers as such. This is the Swiggy guy who delivers your food for you, or the Uber Eats guy. But there's a whole hidden factory behind all of this that makes sure that all of these things happen. So we look at it from a broad perspective. And secondly, we have a distinguished panelist here, Professor Dhruv Nath, and so we'll take advantage of his presence and kind of do a deeper dive into the e-commerce industry as well, since and especially the products, product retailing related aspect of e-commerce, because that is heavily logistics intensive, although e-commerce wouldn't be kind of the sole focus of today's discussion as such. And thirdly, and arguably most importantly, let's keep this discussion focused on providing our youth stakeholders kind of a roadmap that offers them a more holistic, kind of multi-dimensional view of the logistics sector, and gives them a good understanding of kind of the opportunities available for them within this sector, and provides them a clear perspective on the way forward. How do they connect the dots and capitalize on those opportunities as such? And we'll hopefully keep our responses short so we can keep this discussion going. And I'd like to allow like the allocated 15 minutes or so toward the end to take questions and answers from our audience as such. Okay. With that, being said, I'd like to toss the first ball to Professor Dhruv. And Professor Dhruv, can you quickly share your thoughts on, what you think are the current and future opportunities, career opportunities in e-commerce? Kind of you could start off with the state of the e-commerce industry as such, and kind of segue into current and future opportunities, preferably as it relates to the logistical side, of the business. What are the current and anticipated talent and skill gaps that you see in this industry, and most importantly, what would be the most optimal way for our youth to prepare for success in this industry as such?
Okay. Thanks, Ramesh. Very long question. It actually has a very long answer. And since you've handed over to a professor, one of the problems professors face is they can't stop. They start,
Right.
they can't stop. But anyway, I'll try and make it very, very brief. I'll just mention a couple of important things. I think, first of all, I'll talk about one direction that the world seems to be moving in. And secondly, I'll talk about one opportunity, one career opportunity for youngsters. One of the major directions that I've seen in supply chain management and logistics is on the supply side. So I'm an angel investor and I have been dealing with a lot of startups. So my focus is likely to be around startups. So there's one startup called Supply Port. What they do is they have created something called an aggregator model. And if you look at restaurants, restaurants will take in all kinds of cold drinks, soda, etc., etc., etc. The problem is, A, the price that they get from the distributor is high. B, very often they want immediate stocks, because one crate of Coke has gone out of stock and therefore they want one crate. The distributor is not willing to do that. So this guy, Supply Port, actually uh, deals with suppliers like Coke, like Pepsi, and supplies to the restaurant. Now, this is what we call the aggregator model. So rather than the distributor supplying direct to the restaurant, and by the way, this would also apply to Kirana shops. So I know of one more company where there's an aggregator who basically picks up from distributor and supplies to the Kirana shop or the restaurant. That is one area which seems to be booming because these are guys, if you look at small restaurants, small shops, the distributor doesn't care about them. If his beat means you will land up there, let's say, 2 weeks later, it's going to be 2 weeks later. I want the stuff today because it's out of stock, right? So this is one huge booming area that is likely to be created. Just one more comment, since you raised this, Ramesh. I think today, irrespective of which field you're in, and it's equally true of e-com, logistics, etc. I think if there is one field you need to focus on and learn about, it is uh, analytics, right? Because the world is just exploding. When you talk of logistics, when you talk of e-com, look at the number of customers there are. Look at India. You got 130 crore customers, right? Who wants what? How do we ensure that the last mile is taken care of? What are the problems you faced? Who are the guys who insist on cash on delivery? Who are the guys who insist on cash on delivery and then they don't take the stuff, or they take it and then send it back? Yeah. So analytics is going to be a very, very major opportunity for anybody, and I would strongly suggest any youngster should get into this field.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. That, hopefully folks would get your thoughts going, and feel free to shoot, your comments so we can kind of start looking at questions flowing as well. So thank you, Professor. So let's pass the mic to Mr. Ravikant now. He represents institutions, so he's the panelist from the institutions. Mr. Ravikant, can you please share your thoughts on the same three questions that we asked Dr. Dhruv, and also think of these questions from a wider, kind of global end-to-end logistics perspective, not limiting to just e-commerce, and also how prepared are institutions to kind of, address these gaps?
Thanks, Ramesh. See, firstly, logistics sector council for the first time in the country have scoped this entire sector which has not happened for the past 70 years in the country, right after independence. So we have scoped this into 12 different subsectors where the government of India has also acknowledged this through the Logistics Division, Ministry of Commerce. They are namely warehousing, transportation, e-commerce, EXIM logistics, freight forwarding and customs clearance, courier and express like your DHL, FedEx and all of them, port terminals, inland container depots and container freight stations, rail logistics, liquid logistics, supply chain in support of manufacturing, inland waterways and marine services, cold chain logistics, and air cargo operations. So the list is, though we have scoped it to 12 subsectors, but logistics is an ocean. Because generally people attribute logistics to transportation, loading, unloading, and possibly talk e-commerce as a different sector apart from logistics. But now I think things are coming into one place where the national logistics policy is also going to get approved by the government of India. So what I'm trying to tell is the scope of a career in logistics has got bright future. Because we are a horizontal function, we are not a vertical function. We are there in every other sector. We are there in IT, we are there in hospitality, we are there in hotels, we are there in hospitals, we are there in everywhere. So logistics is a horizontal function. So coming to employment and entrepreneurship, for people aspiring, because as of now, logistics has always been, you join at the bottom line and then entry level, then you move up the ladder. If you look at the CEOs of DHL, FedEx, and a lot of them have joined one point of time as a courier delivery boy, but now they are the CEO. So the trend continues, including me. I've joined as a contact center executive DHL. 14 years, I become the CEO of Logistics Sector Skill Council. So that's how it has been happening, because since independence, there are no academic courses which are offered in logistics in the country. So for the first time, we have started off something in logistics with the apprenticeship program, which is BBA logistics, BCom logistics, and all that. And 52 institutions are running, these courses, and 2,500 people have already, got enrolled. And for the first time this year, we are launching a BMS, Bachelor of Management Studies in Aviation and Air Cargo. So these are the courses in support of the career aspirations that the youth have. Basically, there are two things which are very neglected, because logistics, though there's a lot of physical activity, but I think there's, as Mr. Dhrunath also has referred, it should be a lot of research based, because if you order 10 items in Amazon, there are 10 different delivery boys delivering those 10 items to you. So there needs to be an aggregation to reduce the cost, because India is the highest in terms of the logistics cost, which is 14%, while the world's average is about 6%. So aggregation has to be there. And there's a lot of digitization which needs to happen, especially referring to blockchain, because the moment just referring an example of letter of credit, if I send something from India to US, and there are always two questions of unless and until you pay me, I will not send the shipment, because once I ship it out, what is the guarantee of the payment? And the same thing on the other end. What if I pay and you don't send the shipment? So there's a letter of credit which comes in. So the blockchain is something which will actually reduce the time in logistics, because the moment the payment is deposited into the bank, I think the shipment has to ship out automatically. Then individuals taking decisions basis the references that they get from the banks and so on and so forth. So there needs to be a lot of digital transformation, and especially blockchain is going to help in terms of track and trace, be it why it is not because today in the entire line of supply line, you don't know where the shipment is damaged. That's the biggest thing, because you get something and that's damaged, it goes out. The entire logistics cost invested on that is gone. You never know where it got damaged. So I think a digital transformation will help us tell us that where it is damaged and how to prevent that. So that's something. And coming to the skill gap, as per the KPMG report, 53 lakh people would be required by 2025 in the logistics sector.
Did you say 15 lakhs?
53 lakh is as per the KPMG by 2025. So that's the skill gap that India can foresee. And regarding other transformations, robotics can come in, because there is lot as of now. Whatever the robotics that are used in logistics and fulfillment centers and warehouses, nothing from India. So people can start thinking about how do they optimize, be it picking. There are a lot of voice picking, the pick to light and pick to tone and all that, but then nothing is from India. So people
Okay.
should start thinking about how to transform, how to invent, how to do research, and how to come up with robotics. And that's something that youth can think from Indian
Right.
perspective. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Excellent thoughts. We'll summarize and get back to some of those critical points that you mentioned. And I'm sure folks have questions. And so let's move to our youth professional, Mr. Nagaraju, and he's one self-made person. Like you've given these examples of folks who've traditionally worked in logistics industry, and so he probably has an interesting perspective to provide. Mr. Nagaraju, you've heard the respected, panelists from the industry and institution. So what are your thoughts on what you've heard so far? Do you have any questions? Do you have any suggestions? Are you encouraged by what you heard? Um, so feel free to provide your thoughts as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. Actually, I have a few suggestions for the youth who are getting into this e-commerce and logistics industry. So rather than the few can afford their MBAs from IIMs or anything B schools, but the people who cannot afford these things on B schools, they can just get into the certification courses, because handling DG cargos in airports or at seaports, that will be taking 2 to 4 months of certification courses. Even everyone are providing nowadays, that too with some like Tirwin.in. So they are actually based in Chennai and Mumbai. So they can provide us some certification courses who are very interested into this logistics and e-commerce industry. So DG cargo, dangerous goods. So some hazardous cargo like oil tankers or diesel or some crude oil for export or import. These certified guys are more helpful in those areas where these can be handled. So other than that, we have a few other certification courses, even online, because of this after pandemic, before pandemic also. But from UK-based institutions are providing online certifications nowadays for 2 months, 3 months, and 4 months. So among that, basics of logistics and freight forwarding, and I suggest our this youth who are getting into this logistics, I suggest them get into the freight forwarding industry, where there are a lot of opportunities, not only in India, are also worldwide. So freight forwarding, there are different branches where they can get into their fields, like pricing, operations, warehouse management, inventory, procurement, even also some seaports where we have a lot of seaports in India, like Krishnapatnam and and also Chennai ports. There also even they can get good opportunities. Also, we can even they can go for some special training where in Mumbai, like for vessel planning, how to load the containers in the vessel, how to what is the yard planning, how containers are placed in the yard when the containers out from the vessels. So these are all certified courses, as well as offline course. So they can concentrate on that. And also nowadays for these QC operators, quay crane operators in seaports, so they are also earning around 4 to 5 lakhs per month.
Okay.
Rather than other operation sets like GM and all, they will be earning around 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs per month. On the same way, equal to them, these QC operators, actually we have less QC operators in Indian ports. So even all the ports require QC operators. Only Vizag port is providing a training session on all these QC operations. So QC operators, actually what they do is lift the container from the port or on a trailer and place it in the vessel, and again for offloading the container from the vessel, they have to pick up the container and place it on the trailer and move it. So for this, there is a good scope actually for new jobs and all. Also, we have some ICD operations. Even IT guys can get into this logistics industry. Not only logistics, even seaports. They require IT guys and operations, and also fire and safety is more important. So even for fire and safety, we have a lot of certification courses,
Okay.
rather than going to +2 plus graduation or post graduation.
Okay.
Yes,
So
please.
sorry. Yeah. So that was a lot, So let's digest what you said, right? So there's so much information there. But what I hear is, apart from having formal, courses out there, BBA and such, around the logistics sector, there are pockets of opportunity where, folks could be trained relatively quickly through certifications and such and skills development, and really lucrative, really high-paying jobs as well. So that's encouraging. So I'd say let's move on, and we'll come back to all of this in a moment. But let's pass on the mic to Mr. Faizan, a student panelist, and Mr. Faizan, you've heard all of these experienced panelists provide their thoughts. Would you want to now join?
Yeah, sure, sir. I'm getting, yeah, sir. So I am new to this e-commerce world, but right now what we are doing is we are creating a platform for local businesses to give competition to big giants of e-commerce world, like Amazon, Myntra, Flipkart examples. What we are doing is we are trying to come up with a platform for the local businesses right now after the lockdown after the corona vaccines comes out. These businesses, they need a platform to compete with Amazon and Myntra, because right now people are comfortable shopping on these platforms, right? So we are trying to give them a space where they can compete, where they can, have a market value or have a say in the market as well. And also one more thing I have doubt in logistics is logistic and packaging goes hand to hand. So we are trying to come up with a system where packaging also is eco-friendly and also cheaper than plastics. Right now, logistic, they use plastic. Most of the logistic companies, they use this thing affects this eco-friendly packaging. Also, we are trying to come up with something like that, which is cheaper, which is substitute to plastic, and yeah, in this field also. But right now, in front of all the experts panelists, I don't think I have anything to say, because they have, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no harm there. I mean, if I were in your position, I'll listen and learn from the industry. But also, I might have questions for them. So what you've learned so far in terms of opportunities, you've learned about certain segments where you can see opportunities. You've learned quite a bit about where can you meet those skill gaps and such. And so what are your thoughts really about it? Do you think you see the logistics industry kind of promising? Does it look promising to you?
It does look promising, but yeah, there are some gaps that we need to fill in. There are some issues that we need to cover. For example, environment is the biggest issue right now, and they have seen how the logistic world affects the environment right now. When the world was actually going down, the environment was coming up. So we need to understand, we need to maintain balance right now. So we need to come up with ideas how to.
Standpoint, you're concerned about the ecological footprint of logistics activity. Your concern mainly is about kind of controlling that aspect. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So so I have a few questions here. The first question I have is for Mr. Ravikant, is about, can you elaborate a little bit more? Did you mention about a national logistics policy as such?
Yeah, Ramesh.
Elaborate a little bit more about it.
So for the first time, logistics did not have it was not having any sort of an industry status. Neither it did have an infrastructure status. So for the first time, the government of India has realized that logistics is a very, very important function. So the infrastructure status was given to logistics, which means the industry gets benefited with this by getting cheaper loans, which was not the case before, because they never used to get cheaper loans from the nationalized banks, or neither they get loans from the nationalized banks. They need to go for private lenders, and they used to get it with much higher interest rates, which is not the case right now. So, which means necessarily that the government has realized that there's a lot of importance. So they created a logistics division under the Ministry of Commerce. Previously, logistics did not have single ministry because they used to report to Ministry of Civil Aviation, Roadway, Ministry of Roadways and Highways and Road Transport, Ministry of Shipping, Ministry of Commerce, and a lot of ministries. So now there's a division, and they have come up with a national logistics policy right now. And the aim of this national logistics policy is to bring down the cost of logistics in India, which is 14% right now, compared with the world's average of 6%. So if we are able to bring down the logistics cost, the end price of all the products also will come down. That's the whole motto. So one of the steps that the government of India has taken to bring down the logistics cost is to basically skill people, because the turnaround time for one product from the first mile to the last mile is average about 3 to 4 days, while the world's average is about 1 to 2 days. And the transport, any truck driver in the US can drive about 700 kilometers in a day, while the same truck driver in India will drive at least about 300, which is 50%, because of the infrastructure, because of the skills that he possesses. A lot of aspects to consider. So national logistics policy would address all these issues in terms of skilling, infrastructure, what are the policy decisions that the government has to take in terms of exim, creating of embargoes on imports and exports and all that. So all that would comprise of a national logistics policy. It is at this point at the draft stage, but possibly after this, the COVID scenario is done with, I think the national logistics policy would be approved by government of India.
Okay, excellent. Professor Dhruv, you mentioned about a couple of important things over here. You mentioned about the aggregator model, which seemed to be kind of an untapped segment here, especially in terms of going after those smaller shops, the kiranas and such. So can you elaborate a little bit more in terms of, from an opportunity standpoint, are we talking about everybody becoming entrepreneurs? What kind of, you mentioned analytics kind of playing a big role in how how this industry will be shaped as well. And so from an advice to youth in terms of where they need to be allocating focus between what you mentioned and what you heard, Mr. Ravikant mentioned, what are your thoughts? Can you elaborate a little bit more on what we discussed earlier?
Okay, sure. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, I must clarify, I am not, unlike Nagaraju and Ravikant, I am not an expert in logistics, but I have spent a lot of time with startups in the e-com industry, which includes logistics. So I'll try and focus a little more on that. I think, you, in your initial remarks, Ramesh, you mentioned job opportunities, etc., etc. But now you've talked about entrepreneurship. I think that's what I would like to focus on.
Okay.
There are actually a phenomenal number of opportunities for youngsters and also for oldies, not only for youngsters, right? In these spaces. Aggregator model is one simple example because every small time retail outlet, whether it's a kirana shop or a restaurant or whatever, will need supplies quickly. Otherwise, the customer goes somewhere else, right? So he needs supplies quickly and he needs supplies cheaper, right? So this industry is actually moving more and more towards aggregators, and that's an opportunity for every potential youngster who wants to create a startup. I just want to mention a couple of things. I think Faizan talked about the fact that he wants to create an alternative to Amazon. Just keep one thing in mind, Faizan, and that's true for anybody else who's listening in. it is very difficult to compete with a gorilla in the same space. Very difficult, right? Because Amazon has economies of scale. Amazon can twist arms, get whatever discounts they can. You will not be able to do that, right? So if you're trying to compete head on with Amazon, you will die. And I don't want you to die. I don't want any youngster to die, right? So don't do that. I think what you need to do, therefore, is either collaborate with Amazon. So you could be a platform which fits into Amazon for, let's say, one specific area of supplies, right? That's one example. I'll give you one more example quickly. We actually invested in a very interesting company called Tin Men. You know, the Bombay Dabbawalas, the English translation of that is Tin Men. It's Hyderabad based. What these guys did was, you know, the food delivery industry, Zomato, Swiggy, etc. There used to be lots of them. There was Tiny Owl, there was lots of other guys. Most of them wound up, right? Now the problem is you can't compete with a guy like Zomato or Swiggy because they have economies of scale, right? What this guy did was very, very interesting. He says, I will not deliver to the home. I will look at a specific niche. So I will only deliver lunch and only lunch to people in offices, right? Now look at the benefit. Number one, he needs delivery boys only for those 3 hours, typically between 12 and 3, right? Because after that, lunchtime in offices is over, number one. Number two, because he's delivering to offices, every time he makes a delivery, he actually delivers maybe 10, 15, 20 lunch packets. So the cost of delivery, A, because delivery boys are required only for 3 hours and not for the entire day. And B, because every time you will deliver a large number of packets. The cost of delivery, also the cost per packet delivered was very, very low. All right. And this is how he beat the hell out of most other people. And incidentally, Zomato found this so interesting that Zomato actually bought out a very large stake in this company, right? Because Zomato found this guy had done the right thing. So all I'm trying to say is anything to do with e-com, anything to do with logistics, it's going to boom. It's going to boom in this country. Just make sure you're not competing with, you know, the giants in this space. For example, don't try and compete with Mukesh Ambani. I mean, you can't. Even Sunil Bharti
That's the
has not been able
highly
to
impossible.
compete with Mukesh Ambani, right? So as long as you're doing something
Yeah.
unique, as long as you're doing something which doesn't take the large competitor head on, you're in good shape.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. So I have a
Yeah.
question again for Mr. Ravikant. So you mentioned about the logistics council, trying to develop these academic courses, the BBA in logistics, etc., and trying to deliver it through a whole range of institutions. So can you elaborate a little bit more in terms? Who's driving this content? Is it pretty much you pretty much give them the idea and give them provide some backing from a certification standpoint, but leave the content creation, for instance, to those institutions as such, or is it something that's being more standardized, the way you create content and deliver that content and those expectations around that certification to make sure that the youth who avail of these opportunities, training opportunities, kind of pretty much you have an apples to apples comparison here. So can you elaborate a little bit more in terms of these courses itself? I'm sure the audience would be interested in understanding
Sure,
more.
sure, Ramesh. Yeah. So, firstly, nothing of this sort was there in the country where there were academic courses in logistics up till 2016. No, sorry, 2019. So 2019 is when we started envisaging that why can't logistics courses go on to academic, then just be around, stick to skill development alone. So we had to work closely with the UGC and AICTE both, because we introduced technical courses and also the academic courses. So what we have first introduced is we have introduced BCom logistics, BBA logistics, and BBM logistics. So why we had to take about 3 different courses is because we don't want to disturb the existing structure which is already prevailing in because we cannot fit our courses unless and until UGC had to approve that, and UGC only approves if there is already an existing course. So that's how we chose BCom, where somebody would study logistics with accounting, BBM logistics, where somebody would study logistics with management, and BBA logistics with administration. So that's how the courses are designed. And for the first time in the country, where this has now become the best demonstrated practices for the country, and it's going to change the whole education system in India, which is also included in the new education policy that the government has already introduced. For the first time, we are the ones we have introduced degree apprenticeship. So all these courses are known as degree apprenticeship, which means if there are 3 years with 6 semesters, all the odd semesters would be academic and all the even semesters would be apprenticeship in the organization. So again, there's a scheme which is run by Government of India, which is called as NAPS, which is National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, where the government would incentivize the industry for employing apprentices, because apprenticeship, while it was confined to only manufacturing sector up till 2016, from the year 2016, it is also extended to the service sector. So not many people knew this, and we are driving that. That's how we came up with degree apprenticeship. So it is like earn while you learn. So somebody joins this 3 years course, say they pay about 50,000 rupees per year, and they do 6 months of academic course in the college, and 6 months they go to the industry and do the apprenticeship, which is a paid apprenticeship. And one of our students who got a stipend of 26,000 from Expeditors. So 26,000 into 6 is what she has earned, while she's paid 50,000 rupees as a yearly fee. So this is yeah. So that's how. So we started off with 420 students. Now we have 2,500, and we're going to scale it up year on year. Because of seeing the success of this, we also introduced technical courses in diploma. Diploma, where now the entire warehouses are getting automated. Now there are not a lot of technicians who can maintain the automated warehouses. There are not technicians who can maintain the material handling equipment in India. So we have formally introduced that in the diploma as well, which is known as logistics technology, diploma in logistics technology. And not only that, to have a subsequent postgraduate program, because everybody started asking, what if I am qualified on BCom logistics? Is there an MCom logistics, which we don't have? So we had to again convince the Government of India to introduce something called as MS Data Analytics and Supply Chain. So that is offered currently by Lloyd Business School this year, and Priya University and NIIT has also approached us from next academic year. Possibly they're going to offer that as well, which is, but whatever the courses that we introduced, they're all apprenticeship based. For the MS, it is research based. So after 18 months course that I do, 12 months I go to the academic institution, 6 months I go and do a research in any of the organizations by taking a problem statement from them. So possibly I go to Amazon and I get the problem statement of reverse logistics. So I do a research on that with a lot of analytics in place, and then I give them a solution. And so that's how it works. So these are the courses. And with regards to the course content, everything is designed by us. We have experts sitting in our organization. Everything is designed by us, and the entire coordination of having the student linked to the industry for apprenticeship is taken care by us. So the faculty training is done by us. The content development is done by us. The curriculum is given by us, designed by us. The apprenticeship is offered by us. And also we have developed a platform which is logistics learning management systems, where we also train the students through this logistics learning management systems as well. So it's a gamut of everything which gets into the education system right now. And as of now, we have 52 institutions offering. And this year we have come up with BMS courses, which is Bachelor of Management Sciences in specific verticals like BMS in e-commerce operations, BMS in air cargo operations, BMS in liquid logistics, BMS in rail logistics, because now the railways are getting privatized, and 19 organizations have been finalized to run trains on a private mode right now in the country for the first time. So there needs to be a lot of people who should be trained in rail operations as well. And
Okay.
for the first time, railways have come up with double-decker logistics. Somebody needs to be trained on that, and for the first time, they have created. Yeah.
Yep. So no, there's so much to absorb here. So what I get a sense is there's so much, being thought of. There's so much, between yesterday and tomorrow. There is so much in the pipeline that
Yeah.
you guys are working on. So we have a hard stop. Like in 5 minutes, we're going to take questions. But before that, I just wanted to kind of follow this up with a quick question. In terms of awareness, I mean, you're doing so much in the backdrop. So in terms of, advertising what you're doing, actually, advertising is not the ideal word, but in terms of, driving home that awareness, what is being done? So students know that, hey, these are, it expands their horizon in a sense of what's available, but also in terms of this is what I can do to get a hold of those opportunities as such.
As of now, we are working with the autonomous institutions in the country. So we have left the marketing part to the autonomous institutions right now, because since we had to take a head start in the year 2019, but now we are propagating it through Government of India, and now, as I told you, this has become the best demonstrated practices, where the government has included what the guidelines that we have framed has now become the national education policy as well. So from now on, the government is going to drive all these apprenticeship-based courses, and every institution in the country will mandatorily have this from now on, from this academic year. So
Okay.
we really don't have to market this, but to tell you the fact, while any college was offering about 10 courses, this course had filled the admissions before any other course did. So I think that alone gives us a sense that people are trying to realize the importance of this course without any
Excellent.
marketing. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So question for Mr. Nagaraju is, you've gone the hard way. You've taken the hard, path to the difficult path to get to where you are at right now. So if you had, in hindsight, if you had, some of this, the courses that Mr. Ravikant mentioned, an opportunity to learn stuff. You're a BCom yourself, right? So learn, say BCom logistics. Do you think you would have been able to get to where you are at right now a lot more quicker, sooner than you perhaps did? Mr. Nagaraj?
Yeah, Mr. Ramesh. So what Mr. Ravikant said is right. So almost he has filled up what I have to give you. I have to answer you.
No, the
So,
question. Yeah, sorry. Did you get the question, or do you want me to repeat?
can you just repeat it once?
Yeah, it's like, so when you started out, you had to do a lot of work to get to where you are at right now, right? I mean, you started in, at a certain position and kept growing and growing and growing. And instead, if somebody said, hey, if you there is a BCom, in logistics, and if you take that course, you learn a lot. Would you have gone and taken that course instead of, I know you have a preference for being an entrepreneur, but my question really is, other than having these certifications on specific areas like hazmat and QC and stuff, instead if you had a more structured course, do you think it would have helped you in your career as such?
So actually, rather than certification, while getting into the field is different because certification from books, whatever the knowledge they give is temporary. But when we get into the field, we can understand what is the exact position is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So better getting into instant certifications. This is the right way from getting a down level as an executive or runner boy. Because I started my career as a runner boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Mr. Ravikant also mentioned about, apprenticeships. So you have courses where you blend in both academic learning with actual apprenticeship. So that kind of provides them both the academic grounding, the knowledge.
So
Do you think that would help? That would solve the problem?
I would like to add one more point for that. For apprenticeship, anyhow they'll get all the idea in the classes, and they should also get into the field. If they then only they can get they can get more knowledge.
Okay.
Rather than certifications. I mean, apprenticeship, Ravikant said is right. And also they should add some field work also for that.
Okay.
So when
right.
they're giving a training on some operations like thing, so they should take their guys to the field. So this is what going on, and this is a way of a process. Then it will add up some more positive thing.
Okay. All right. So I think this sets up a good foundation, for taking questions from our audience here. I think they've seen a perspective of logistics, the e-commerce segment. They've seen what's been done in a coordinated fashion in terms of promoting this field and trying to build upon the opportunity. So let's look at some of the questions we have. The first question we have is demand and supply versus fulfillment challenges. Where do the opportunities lie for youth and startups? So, all right. So this is about connecting, demand with supply and, making sure that the fulfillment process is up to meeting that need. And Mr. Ravikant mentioned about what the challenges, what's the friction that we have to encounter today. So Mr. Ravikant, do you want to take this question in terms of, I think you've already answered it to some degree earlier on in terms of what the challenges are, but maybe that would be kind of the opportunity as well, in a sense, is, you mentioned about automation and, blockchain and digitization and stuff. So if you want to take that question.
Yeah, with regards to the demand and supply measure in India, it's like, as of now, the demand is very, very high on the entry level jobs. We did a recent demand aggregation from 20 odd companies just to ensure that we support the migrants in this pandemic. Surprisingly, we got a demand aggregation of 168,000 people who are required to be employed by 20 different organizations on pan-India basis. But we are not having so many people. So the demand and supply is always a question in India, because that's how you have a lot of manpower service providers. Even if you take Flipkart or an Amazon in India, they have about 20, 25 odd manpower service providers. So again, coming back to the crux of the topic, which is aggregation and optimization. There should be some sort of an aggregation and optimization. Maybe some startups can come up in terms of, because different processes, different ways of delivering, different means of delivering. But somebody who can think on how do they demand the aggregation in terms of the manpower is going to help the industry a lot. And in fact, Google, there's an application prepared by Google, which is Google Cormo, which does the demand aggregation, which it uses the artificial intelligence, and they're also working with us in terms of having this problem solved. So if somebody can think of that aspect, I think that's a great value add that they want to do for the industry. So
Okay.
that's something that's really challenging, and nobody thought about this at this point of time.
Okay. Yeah. Question. Another question directed at Mr. Nagaraju. The question is, do you think your curriculum in post-graduation helped you in your career or in your current profile? So this is kind of going back to something that you mentioned earlier. Do you think your education really helped you? It seemed like you're, of the position that a lot of what you learned on the job as such. So if you can kind of answer this question of whether your curriculum and actually what you studied, your BCom and whatever you studied, helped you in your career as such, or in your current job. Is it of any use at all?
So the time I started my career during my BCom. So that BCom actually completely taxation, and I was working as a runner boy for a logistics company. So both are different. But at the time I need a job, so I was into logistics. But after that I won't leave it. So anyhow we have an experience on logistics. That's why my post graduation MI Master of International Business. So anyhow we have some experience. So based on that we can find a better opportunity. So on that basis, I have opted for international business in my post graduation. So that has helped me a lot seriously. So also that we have some additional foreign languages included in that. So one is Japanese and French. So based on that Japanese, I got an offer and for a seaport, that is Krishnapatnam, and they need a Japanese translator.
Okay.
So actually that has helped me a lot, because without any the first first opportunity is as a Japanese translator. So they have a vacancy. So even I have searched a lot of job set for the same, either a French translator or Japanese translator. But at that time I don't get any opportunities. But suddenly one fine day I have received a call. We need a Japanese translator for our Korean Japanese customers. So actually, really, it has helped me a lot.
Okay. All right. So what we hear here is that, rather than the formal education he's had, his BCom and such, he has chosen, Mr. Nagaraju has chosen, depending on opportunities, he's chosen to kind of up his skills, capitalize on whatever opportunities were there, and he chose a route. In this particular case, if one of the stop points for him was to learn a new language, and that helped him quite a bit in terms of furthering his career. So if anything, the message I get here is, formal education is great, good, it provides a good foundation, but if you want to really move, you need to learn to reinvent yourself as you move along, right? So I have another question around, is a little offbeat. It's about drone deliveries. So what are the opportunities, and when do you see this shaping up in India as a full service? Maybe I'll direct this to Professor Dhruv, because he's at the cutting edge of a lot of what's going on in the e-commerce sector. Do you see any interest from any of your IIT alumnus about starting, drone deliveries, for instance?
Yeah. So there is certainly a lot of interest. What typically happens is that anything which is new technology, whether it is blockchain, as Ravi mentioned, or virtual reality, augmented reality, drones. I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting for people who want to get in, and it's also equally exciting for investors. You have to keep a couple of things in mind when you look at drone delivery. The environment in the West is very different from the environment in India, right? So if you look at the cost of delivery in the West through a delivery boy, for example, it's very high. Whereas the cost of delivery from, let's say, a McDonald's outlet or a Domino's outlet to a home is much, much lower because of the levels of salary involved here, right? So the break even in terms of cost between drone delivery and human delivery is going to be very different compared to the US. So it's an exciting thing to do, but the cost implications have to be looked at. I think more than that, drone delivery would be relevant in India where humans cannot easily go. So for instance, anything which is dangerous, right? A place where it is dangerous to go, or a place where it's very far away, and therefore the cost of delivery human wise is going to be high. I think that's where it's going to be of interest. But my guess is that drone delivery is likely to be far more applicable in the West than in India, except for specific things.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Okay.
But we'll have to see how it goes.
Ramesh, if I may add to what Mr. Dhruv has told, Yeah, it's picking up because for the first time, this month, the Ministry of Civil Aviation has accorded permissions for drone training schools, and 4 of such schools have got the permission to train people who can operate the drones. So I think somewhere it has started off, but there's a long way to go. Like Mr. Dhruv said, as of now, it would be only to use it for agricultural spraying of the pesticides, or maybe for spying, or for monitoring the traffics. But deliveries, I think there's a lot of time for it.
The technology is definitely there. Permission from the government has come in. The only issue is the business viability. That's the only thing I'm questioning. So like Ravi rightly mentioned, it is being used in certain areas where it is viable compared to human intervention. I would imagine it will change over time.
Right. So we have time for one more question, and then I'll kind of summarize our discussion and conclude it. So the final question I have here is with regards to the friction we have with China, in a sense, from a trade standpoint, not just India, but this seemed to be the kind of the prevalent mood as such. What will the shakeups, what will be the implications from a logistics industry standpoint? And is there a way we could capitalize, by we, I mean India, could capitalize on that the set of conditions that exist around trading with China today? And so I'll direct this question to Mr. Ravikant here. So can you,
Yeah.
do you think that's at the back of the mind of the national logistics policy as well? I mean, again, just
Yeah,
being
yeah, Mr. Ramesh. Firstly, it's very difficult to compare ourselves with what implications we would have in terms of barring China, because since they have devalued their currency and then they offer the products for a much competitive rate, which is not possible for India to offer in that sort of a price. So firstly, that's the challenge. Secondly, we don't have that sort of, though make in India has been mooted in, but then the takeoff is not as expected. So we need to have a lot of local manufacturing happening here in India, because most of it where we were as of now dependent on a lot of imports. We only have the assembly plants. Just to give you an example, like we have Foxconn, we have Flextronics, all of them setting up their manufacturing units in India, but none of it is manufactured. Rather, everything is imported, and they have only been assembled in India. So it's a difficult question to answer right now at this point of time. But yes, there are clear evidences that there are a lot of companies who are wanting to migrate and set up their industries in India. But the trend would continue in terms of being a country feasible for assembling and not for manufacturing at this point of time. So there's a lot of time for it. That's what I think with all the knowledge that I have.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think that's about the time we have. So quickly wrapping up, and thank you all. This has been, kind of a real good learning experience for me as well. So in terms of what I've gathered, and feel free to chime in if you think I've missed anything. For one, I think, what we've learned is there is a concerted effort to look at logistics as a whole, to kind of look at it from an integrated standpoint in India through the national logistics policy as such. And under this overarching initiative, there's this whole bunch of work being done around improving the quality of education being delivered, kind of creating more opportunities, trying to blend the kind of kind of provide a blended experience, learning experience, both from an academic setting, from a real world setting. There are pockets within e-commerce, for instance, that seem pretty promising, like the aggregator model, for instance. It also appears that, a lot of what's holding us back, what's driving that high relative cost of logistics as a percentage of, the overall cost of a product or a service in India as opposed to the West, is all this friction that we see in our fulfillment process. We have infrastructure that needs to be developed. We have opportunities around automation, around innovating using new digital technologies, blockchain that can immensely improve the level of trust and transactional efficiencies as such. Uh, and also for those who do not have the time or the means to go in for a formal curriculum, there seems to be, Mr. Nagaraj, you mentioned about, certain niche segments where you can earn a certification and get a relatively high paying job. So there's enough room for all kinds of, opportunities within, this is a pretty broad space with a lot of opportunities as such. So the other thing is, from what I've heard is that to really if you look at the best jobs and at the intersection of e-commerce and logistics, it seems to be jobs that require opportunities that I shouldn't say jobs, opportunities that require a high level of analytics. That seems to be the next frontier in a sense, in terms of having the means to gather good intel and kind of employing that in business as such. And so overall, I think these are kind of the big picture things happening, and there's enough of room from an entrepreneurship standpoint. You can, and also, if you want to approach it from a more structured standpoint, you've got enough of opportunities within logistics as well. So we'll formalize, kind of summarize this in a little more in terms of the stop recommendation as well as what came out through this discussion. And I think that would really be, add value. So this is kind of a sector, like I said, that's not glamorous, but at the same time, it is one of those areas that can, that works at the backdrop. The better the logistics capabilities are, the less that a customer needs to, see it as such. Anyway, so I think we've had an excellent session. Thank you so much. And I'm glad I had this opportunity to tap into your brains and understand what your thought processes are. I've seen logistics primarily from a standpoint of the developed economy, and I'm so excited about what's happening over there as well. So thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day, all of you.